Hey guys, welcome to Chillcast. Today we have a very special guest, Sam.
Oh yeah.
No, we have a very special guest. My grandfather. He's gonna go by H. That's your pseudonym.
Yep.
All right.
Well, it's H2,
H2.
or if you're in the chemistry lab, H2O.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the unpopular brother H2O2.
H2O2.
Oh yeah. Water 2, the sequel.
Yeah.
Water 2, the sequel.
He ain't heavy.
Yeah.
He's my brother. No.
He's staying anonymous for legal reasons, as
Is there something you're trying to escape?
he's under witness protection currently.
I am?
Oh.
Okay.
We're in post. We're gonna blur out your face and lower your voice.
Yes. Whatever. Good to be here and good to be on a campus again.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
In my apartment,
Yes.
my humble abode.
We didn't ask Sam's permission.
Oh no, they showed up one day.
He was asleep, and we barreled down his door.
They had,
He was
they had
asleep,
one
so
of those big things. They go.
The SWAT team helped us, and we boom, we just pushed first through the door. You were asleep, so we injected you with what's it called, adrenaline,
Yeah.
and you were just up and you're ready
Put
to
pure
do it.
cocaine in my system to keep me
Yeah.
awake.
But yeah, so I was thinking we could talk about, we're in a time in our lives where we're experiencing a lot of new things. We're in college. We're going to, drug houses. We're doing the hard stuff. And we were thinking about, hearing what it was like when you were in college.
Oh, wow, man. No. Things haven't changed all that much, I don't think. I started at the University of North Carolina in September of 1972, and a lot had gone on in the previous 3 or 4 years, nationally, worldwide, and it had pretty much already shaped what was going on at campus by the time I got there. 1968 was when Reverend Martin Luther King was assassinated. That was just beyond belief, as powerful as that man was. And not long after that, Bobby Kennedy, the brother of the late John Kennedy. Things were getting pretty restless with Vietnam. It was a very unpopular situation, certainly political, but it didn't really matter what party you were a member of. It was just unpopular. And then you have Woodstock roll around, and right after that. And that was probably one of the first times a lot of young people, like about 500,000 of them, got together in one place just to, let it all hang out, as they said at the time. I think there were a few people got hurt and a few people arrested, but it was nothing. I mean, compared to what 500,000 people could do. But it was just a time to express themselves, and there was a lot of music that came out of there, people that you still hear about, like Santana and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, people like that. But the biggest thing was our parents were getting pretty nervous that the music was very popular and getting a little edgier. There was a lot of protest music and such. So by the time I'm in high school, it was kind of mainstream for us, the music. And yeah, it's a little different today, but it's still progressing with you. It's not necessarily new, and the lyrics and everything. But to our parents, it was pretty threatening, just like long hair and sideburns and everything else. But for me, being in high school and looking at what was going on in our own country, Kent State happened one afternoon while I'm in my sophomore year, and 4 university kids are dead. A lot of talk both ways of what happened, who caused it, but you're starting to figure out you're kind of in the real world, and you are a part of it, whether you want to be or not. By the time I was ready to graduate, then President Nixon had already signed a bill to end the draft. I got my draft card. It was a pretty low number. But by the time it was, time to report, they had ended the draft. It took about 18 months for them to get that all done. And so I never had to make that decision. And I will tell you, I'd have gone. But the only word you had to know if you didn't want to go was Canada.
Yeah.
The population of Canada grew a little bit during the draft, at least so we're told. But so by the time I'm getting to college, we've got, heads of state assassinated. We've got kids on campuses, facing tough situations. And it's not that different today in that people rebel against ultra authority or what they view as that. But when you step back and look at both sides, they're not that far apart. That's where I'm going to go with this all day today is you got to stop and understand the other guy. So most of it's propaganda, but there are some strong reasons to feel like people feel. But so by the time I get to college in a town, my University of North Carolina campus was around 4 times as big as the population of where I came from. I mean, for the whole county. So, going from the mountains of North Carolina to the Research Triangle, as they called it, I was seeing stuff I had never seen before or heard of even. So those 4 years were a sharp learning curve. But, what was your biggest angst when you got here?
Can you describe when you say angst?
Well, there's the uncertainty. You're certainly going to take classes and hopefully to get a degree, but there's this whole thing of sort of being on your own. And
I think my biggest fear was just getting a job. Like I was mostly scared of the period of after college and basically like right after college, because it's like I'm on my own now. I didn't know at the time if I would or could get a job, because I had a bunch of people telling me like, oh, you have to join all these clubs, you have to have multiple majors, you're just one person to see people, and I'm computer science. Mm-hmm. But I've also been told basically by I go to a family event, they're like, oh, you're studying computer science, you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah. And
so I'm getting these two different conflicting opinions. Mm-hmm. And fortunately now I have an internship for the summer, and there's a high rate of people getting hired off that by the company. So hopefully right after college I'm able to actually have a job. Well,
and that was what we were encouraged to do after we got in, was to hopefully end up in some kind of an internship. I was fortunate in the hometown. They employed college students that were sons and daughters of the employees, and so we had good work and good training. But that angst existed then was, okay, after 4 years, am I going to have what I need to get a job? And they did a lot of job fairs on campus and things, but it all came down to you could have a skill, but was it marketable?
Yeah.
Okay. And that stands true today too. So that's a reasonable.
And I feel like now it's I guess a lot of not really our parents, but kind of like the baby boomer generation. Mm-hmm. They always talk about how easy, or kind of they had it a little easier with they could buy a house right after they graduated. It was everything was a lot cheaper.
Like $3.
Yeah, three bucks for a house. You could, one person had to work, and you could support a family of 4. But now it's rent's super high, houses are super expensive. Mm-hmm. The market it's hard to actually live, and that's another fear I had of, will I be able to actually support a family well mm-hmm. in the future?
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of memes going around man, what was I doing in 3rd grade? I could have been buying a house, and why was I in school? I could have just been paying rent and buying a house and getting stuff.
Well, to be fair, in 3rd grade that was the housing market for us, or the market crash.
Oh yeah, true.
Yep. You could have bought an inexpensive house at the time. Yeah, probably so. No, that's reasonable. I mean, this last year, a lot of talk about inflation. All right. Well, probably the 2 years leading up to me getting out of school And the first 3 or 4 years out of school, 8 and 9% inflation was nothing. One house that we bought, the interest rate was 18.5%. That's like your credit. That's like buying on a credit card. Now, so what you got to do is figure out how to buy that down, which takes money. But to think that houses had an 18 to 20% interest rate, that was scary. But somehow inflation moved wages up and the prices of houses came down and other things that it kind of levels out. But when you're right in the moment, you don't see how it's going to be any different. It's hard to be patient. But I remember gasoline when I started driving was 30 cents a gallon. I mean,
Sweet.
A barrel of oil literally was under $10.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
probably like $5. And then they had the embargo in the mid 70s, around 74. And suddenly we're waiting in gas lines and limited to 5 or 10 gallons at a whopping 50 cents.
Ugh.
How are we going to drive home with 50-cent gas?
Frick. Oh.
It seemed pretty arduous at the time. So, but I think if you end up with a solid degree or marketable degree, and you have some contacts, and I don't mean you've got to be in the old network or anything like that. Right now is when you make your contacts and you're out visiting, and your first job might be doing book work or something if you even instead of working in the lab or whatever your job is.
Yeah.
And I can promise you the first job you get is not going to be the one you want. You may think it is, but you're not going to really know what you want to do for a career till you get in and try a few things, and then you say, this is what I want to do. I think that's the scary part of starting out. But they added to me, I came out and went to work for a national chemical company as a sales rep, not as a chemist. But the first thing they did was move me, 300 miles from home. I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'd been married 1 month and had no place to live, and pretty much other than my 10-year-old Volkswagen, there wasn't much else. But you figure it out, and that's the education.
Yeah.
But and I've talked to you guys enough to know that you come from pretty good backgrounds, especially you, Alex. And it's nice to know there's a safety net behind you of sorts, but you can't rely on that. It's tough to get out there. But
I don't want to be living at home when I'm 30.
no, and I don't want anybody moving home when they're 30 either. But funnier things have happened, though, right? So I wanted to ask you guys, though, in terms of campus life and political issues, tell me a little bit about what you see here. I mean, have you had protests? Have you had...
Well, before the time we were here, I believe there was a white nationalist, neo-Nazi protest in the square.
I didn't know that.
I had to do research for it.
Mm-hmm.
I did research for it from one of my sociology classes, and it was I don't know. Their ideology doesn't seem peaceful,
No.
but it was a peaceful protest, and a lot of college students, would came to just watch, and one guy got arrested because he got too close to this other guy who was behind a barricade or something, and
When was this?
2017, I think.
No.
Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
That's it's not small world, but things go on and we don't even know about it. It was because for my sociology class, I had to do I had to write a short paper on some sort of collective behavior event, whether it was a riot or a protest or anything like that, and explain through certain sociological paradigms or theories. And I was like, I wonder if anything's happened here. Because, Delhonica's kind of on Saturdays, it's a lively place, but during the week, it's barren, And I was saying earlier to you, all the students leave because, they got to get out of here, on weekends.
I got to go home.
But yeah, like it was a whole thing, a whole event. Everybody like had a different flags. There's a lot of like different like political flags and posters too. So it was kind of a conglomeration of different people protesting. Some people were protesting more right wing stuff. Some people were just straight up, neo Nazis and stuff like that.
We saw much of the same in Chapel Hill, a very liberal college, more liberal than I ever realized going there, coming from a small town. But I can remember the Communist Party coming and giving a presentation on how cool it was to be in communism. And some people, I'll call it demonstrated, they paraded around outside with pictures of the different flags of different countries that were communist in politics. And, it was very quiet. Reserved, no fisticuffs or anything, and it's okay to demonstrate. It's and we were talking about this earlier today. Propaganda is an attempt to make one set of people think the other set of people are not human, and it's an old quote from Winston Churchill, but that's what propaganda does. But you can listen to other points of view. You do not have to agree with it one bit, but there is some reason they're doing it, and you may have a way to sway them or not, but it's rarely with violence. I don't think you change anybody's mind.
Yeah, no, not a great look.
Yeah, we lived about 15 minutes from the Kent State campus when we moved to Ohio, and that was only 5 or 6 years after the campus riot there at Kent State. And there was a lot of violence. There were 4 dead students and 9 injured, and it was handled improperly, and everybody ultimately agreed it was. But anytime you bring in somebody to help control a protest, and the protest is protesting against the very people that are there to control the protest, you're probably not going to have a good outcome.
Yeah.
There was better ways to handle that. But I remember the ROTC building at Kent State was burned down by the protesters, and then they blocked the fire engines from getting in. That sort of upset the National Guard. I mean, it's an example of how it can go wrong. But up to that point, it had been pretty peaceful, and it was just what's the words out of the song we heard today? People carrying signs mostly say "Hooray for our side," and that's a protest. Okay.
Yeah.
But
it can rock your soul if you're in the middle of something that goes violent.
I've seen one protest. Well, kind of 2 protests. Well, 2 protesters. I kind of thought it was funny. It was my freshman year here. I'm waiting for the bus, and I see this one guy who's holding a sign that's like anti-mask, an anti-mask sign. It was one guy. It wasn't. He was just kind of saying. He was just kind of yelling like "Know your rights" as people walked by. Just kind of like unenthused. I don't even know if he wanted to be there. And the funniest part is there's a good 10 feet away. There's a group of 3 people that were pro-masking or pro-maskers having their own like little like rally, I guess. And it was kind of funny because it kind of felt like nothing was happening.
Yeah,
Uneventful.
Yeah, and I remember there's this like thing we use called Yik Yak, which is like a anonymous chat on campus. And
Okay.
I remember I put out a message like, these protests on campus are getting out of hand.
Well, COVID's a great example of people wanting to know which side you're on. And I was on the side of getting well.
Yeah, staying
Yeah.
healthy, that kind of thing.
And I wasn't pro or anti anything. I just wanted to be well and you be well, and we knocked this thing out. But it's we're kind of in a day and age again, like we were back in the '60s, of which side are you on?
Yeah.
And I'm not on a side.
I feel like with like how easy it is to grasp media, like if you look at like CNN and Fox, it's basically like they're pitting each other,
Yes.
each side against each other, and it's very obvious.
And they're fun, and at least Fox is funded by viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Their whole point is just to get people mad so they can watch their thing so they make more money.
Yeah.
And like that. That's why I don't really watch like really big media outlets like that.
Well, I usually get up in the morning and read through a couple of newspapers and then decide what I think are the big stories of the day, and then turn the news on to see which channel is going to carry which story. And it kind of lines up politically who's going to have it as the lead story and who's going to have it buried in the second hour right next to the infomercials and stuff. It's just kind of, but that's media. For us, by the time we got to the late 60s, everybody had a TV by then. In the 50s, that wasn't true. So when John Kennedy came through as president and then succeeded by Lyndon Johnson, and Vietnam begins to ramp up. Up to that, we just had a presence of advisors and such, and some materiel. But now on TV, everybody's hearing the story.
Yeah.
And it's just like now with all the social media, Instagram, whatever, it's all immediate. Well, for the U.S., watching it on TV at 6 o'clock, that was immediate. It wasn't to the minute, but it was the equivalent of compared to what we had in the past. So it's the stories, whoever can cover it the loudest may gain the most followers.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. There's this journalist character in this show I'm watching or rewatching. It's a comic book character show. It's a Daredevil, Marvel's Daredevil.
Right.
And in it, there's a journalist who works at a newspaper. And of course, when the show came out, they're not going to try to pretend that it was in the past. When the comics were actually made. It is set in when it was filmed. Like let's say it was filmed like 2017, 2015, I think. So it is set in that day and age. So people have cell phones. There's social media. Obviously there's TV, and there's news. There are news stations, obviously. Social media and all that. But he works at a newspaper still, and I mean, obviously, I know newspapers still exist, but they're not like the most immediate form of media.
No.
But he, like the whole thing in the show, like they really pay close detail to the fact that this is kind of an old medium. It's coming out of fashion. It's so hard for them to get good stories to print, and with this one journalist who's trying to expose this secret criminal hidden behind all these fake companies and all this stuff. Like this guy, he's trying to, isolate the kingpin of all this crime, and he can't. The constant thing he runs into is his people who are trying to help him, uncover stuff for the newspaper. They're like, "Oh, I saw this happen, and it proves that he's related to this drug scandal or whatever." And he's like, "Do you have a source?" And they're like, "Well, no." And he's like, "Do you have anybody that can corroborate this?" No. And he's like, "Well, I can't print this." And he's like, "It's not some sort of, social media blog where I can just say whatever I want."
It's responsible journalism.
Yeah.
Right.
And it makes me laugh, but I'm like, that's true. He's not just exaggerating. He has somebody to answer to. When he writes a story, it has to be based on corroborated facts and stuff. It can't just be like, I know this guy's a criminal, and I saw it. But no one else did. But I saw it. Trust me, he's a bad guy. And that's what a lot of the conflict, it's a very genius idea for the show, is that's where a lot of the conflict comes from, is they want to expose this guy, Wilson Fisk, so easily, but they can't, because they can't just say that he's a bad guy, and he's on the news parading as this saint, what's it called, philanthropist, but they can't print anything on him because they can't get anything on him.
Can't get anything solid, or nobody will rat him out.
Yeah.
So.
And they can't just go, he's like, I can't just blog, I need to do it the right way. And,
right. Well, so we had the real-time scenario with Richard Nixon going out of office when I'm in the middle of the 70s, and the Watergate break-in, and of course now anything that's a scandal ends in the word gate, right?
Yeah.
Deflate gate, it all comes from right there. But two reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, got in, and they finally got a source. he was anonymous, but he was credible. And they kept digging and kept digging. They put nothing out until they had something they could verify, and it toppled the administration. And Nixon ended up resigning. But it was responsible journalism that got through to that. And, it's a dying breed. I mean, I have some friends that are reporters around the country, and it's hard to sell stories if somebody's flipping in a video or something ahead of them. They don't look too deep anymore. It's hard to find a real in-depth story. So, but read a newspaper or so in the morning, and you got the same thing with Fox and CNN and stuff in newspapers. A lot of newspapers, like the Atlanta paper, combined years ago. It's the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but it used to be the Journal was the more liberal side, and the Constitution was the more conservative side. And now they're together, and the only thing they do is they put the op-eds on the left side for the liberals and the right side for the, and that's about it.
Yeah.
It's they all work together, but they all report. But it's hard to keep a small town newspaper going. It's incredibly expensive.
And they're doing I believe there's like a magazine, like the campus magazine that like some students started or something for like creative writing, I think, or like just creative stuff. And I thought about doing that too. But it's just kind of like, you kind of really have to be into it, because that's like the whole medium is, not as accessible, or, do you sell the do you like hand them out? Do you deliver them? Like it's a cool medium and it's a cool idea for people who are into it. But I don't think they do journalism per se, but like I know it's a magazine or something.
Right.
And so like, how do you get that started and get people involved in that in the campus,
We had a couple of things on campus in addition to the campus newspaper. It was called the Daily Tar Heel. And I still get a copy when I go back, but that was literally came out first thing in the morning with yesterday's campus news and some national stuff, especially related to things that people protest about, or controversial speakers coming to the campus and such, activists and whatnot. But then there were some other papers that were, one of them was, I remember, music related, and one was more of a writing type thing, poetry and things like that. And they went and got a sponsor downtown that would put an ad on the back or half a page on the back, and it was enough for them to do the printing.
That's
okay.
That's cool.
And there's probably somebody around here that would do that.
Yeah.
They thought it would cost them, make it up $100 a month to, and your flyers go out, and everybody knows to pick one up at the commissary or dining hall, whatever you call it here.
I feel like that's one of the biggest like downsides on being on such a small campus, is that you don't really need that much advertising, since it's kind of like right there.
Yeah.
Like you kind of already know where everything is. And also another thing was, I was thinking of, like, as you said, like having like political speakers. We don't really have political speakers or anyone from like other places come here and talk.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true. There are some, like specifically in psychology, they've had like people who, like professors and sociology professors from other schools come. Like I know, because like in one of my classes, it was offered as like an extra credit thing. Like come to was it Gloria Hall or something, and see this speaker, and then write your name on the list so you get extra points on a test or something. So they have they don't have political speakers, but they have like professors and like doctors from other parts of the country come here. But I don't really think enough. I don't think enough come, because it's not enough. I think if they had more like TED Talk-ish kind of things, that'd be interesting. I'm interested in sociology, but not enough to go on a Saturday.
Someone do a whole 2-hour lecture on.
Here, would you like to buy my book? Here's my book. They won't sell it in the textbook section anymore, so here I'm selling it on my own.
Because that one thing I like to do on YouTube is watch like debates, like political debates, like in colleges and stuff. I think that's interesting. I like to look at both sides. And it's just something like I'll throw in the background while I'm playing video games or something. It's just like two people debating for an hour and a half on the current political thing. And I think that's interesting.
And debate clubs, I assume you have one here, but one of the premises of a debate club is that you're on team A and you're on team B, and here's the topic, and then they tell you right before you go on which side you're on, and you've got to defend
Yeah.
your side. And if more people did that just every day, why does she feel this way or this strongly about this? And you try to walk around and look it through their eyes. That's a lot of trouble. But I have found through the years that when I do that, I can understand why some people are upset, and maybe I don't think they should be. But then I can kind of get it. That's just experience. It's not something you learn in college. You just maybe by going to things like that, you learn there's a process by which you can digest what they had to say or to think or present and internalize it enough that you at least understand one more point of view.
And I feel like that's another thing of like media trying to get us to hate each other, because I feel like if you hate someone's based only off their political opinion, you're not going to see them as a person. You're going to see them as just an object of more hatred. So you're not going to actually look at their opinion as an actual opinion. You're just going to think, oh, this person is blah, 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 blah. And for me, I really enjoy having like political debates with this like casual conversation. Well, less debates, but as I said, more just like political conversations, especially with people that don't share my ideas. Like my roommate, me and him, last year, me and him were on two sides of the spectrum. And when we went and worked out with each other, and the whole time we were just like talking about politics. And then at the end, we shook hands, and he was like, "You don't hate me, right?" I'm like, "Of course not." I was like, "I enjoyed our conversation. It was nice."
That's hard to do sometimes.
It's challenging.
It is. Some people think it's a negotiation, that we're going to find some middle grounds, and both of us are going to give up some of our ideals, and that's not what it is. Compromise is finding a third position, and it may suit both of you closely. I spent most of my career negotiating. I was in sales, and when you get into millions of dollars, and Sam wants this and I want this, and as a company, I know what my bottom line is. He knows what his company's bottom line is, and it can't be a zero-sum game of you lost, I win, or something like that. I called them PTPs, profit transfer programs. We're not here just to figure out who gets the profit. There's got to be one other way we can do this. For you guys, it might be, you want to buy a new mixer for recording, and the one you really want is $1,000. The one you can afford is $300, and you go, it's a yes or no question. The guy might spread your payments out over 6 years, and you're like, well, by then I'll have a job and I'll have money, and I can. There's always another way without giving the store away, and that's the same with talking politics and beliefs and stuff. Now, and I don't mean beliefs in terms of forfeiting what your true core beliefs are, but it's trying to understand how applying your beliefs, there may be another way to interact with this person or this group. And it just takes time. It just takes time.
I think there is definitely as far as like the college experience goes, I think one skill that I personally developed, and I definitely think that you did too, is you're leaving your parents. Well, not leaving, but like you're away from your parents. You have your own, you have all this information coming towards you from, other people, professors, the media, and it's, you have somewhat control of what you're hearing and how you're hearing it and what you're thinking of it. And some people, for me, I started to kind of deviate in my ideals a little bit from my parents when I got out of high school, or maybe like late high school. I started to realize some things about different things. And when I got here, I had control of what I could listen to as far as the news. And, to be fair, I don't really listen to main news platforms. I usually watch people on YouTube who cover it. I guess not really good journalists, but, compared to what you were saying, but YouTube journalists, if that's, a category. But, and in that experience of like, controlling of what I hear, I've been able to kind of form my own opinion about things. And I think that's one like part of the college time frame, or just this age range, is that's a skill you either develop or you don't, is like filtering your information, figuring out what you actually think, and not just, going copy paste from your parents. Now, to be fair, like sometimes, you might still, some ideals may persist. Like, you may still strongly believe certain things. You don't always like, directly go, oh, I'm going to be exactly opposite from what my parents believe when I leave them. I'm going to completely rebel against everything I ever thought. I think that's what like some people believe. They're worried like, oh, these colleges are teaching them this and teaching them the water's going to do that. The water's going to turn them into this. And but really it's really up to you. Like, there are definitely core ideals that I still hold on to from my parents. But as far as, politics and, human rights stuff and stuff like that, like there's some stuff that I've had to learn on my own and research on my own, and, not just read article headlines, actually read the article about certain things. And just because of my field of what I've been studying, it's also opened my eyes to other stuff like it. And I say all that to say that like part of this time frame is figuring out what you actually think about things. And some people don't ever deviate.
It's hard. It's easier if you don't deviate. But on the other hand, once you begin to cross a few lines, if the results have been okay or not negative, you feel comfortable challenging a couple of other barriers maybe that you've avoided. But you always have to remember that if you do cross a line, you've left tracks. You can get back if you want to, but a lot of times pride or something may keep you from, kind of that wasn't too good. Sometimes you just say, I'll stay here and just get along with it. But
yeah,
I think that my father was born, during the Depression. And, so when you get around late 1920s and early 30s, you didn't throw anything away. You didn't borrow a nickel. I mean, it was, you lived with what you had. They didn't have running water in the house, until after he left home when he was 18. So I always, when I got to school, I realized there was another viewpoint on things like that, how to manage debt properly, how to look ahead and make investments. Putting money in the bank was one thing. Putting it in the mattress was a lot safer.
Yeah.
But if you came through the Depression where the money in your bank disappeared, or you put it in stocks and it went to zero, the mattress looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Under those circumstances. So I agree with you. I think college is that first step of hearing new voices, and some of them are pretty dang attractive. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And you can make some crazy decisions. You just hope that if they were wrong, they didn't hurt you too bad, But
yeah,
you will learn way more from the failings or the bad decisions. You just hope it doesn't, permanently cause problems for you, and physically or mentally. But it's this is a great time, and I think getting back on campus. I told Alex last year, in August of last year, my former roommates from school, we met on the steps of our old dorm where we had met 50 years ago to the hour, and just looked around the dorm. I mean, looked around. We did go into our old room, but we looked around the campus and the changes and what was the same. And it was more same than it was different, even though it had doubled in structures and people. But you still had the same comfort level of being on campus and all the things that you learned with 100 other people in the dorm. We were way more open than this. I mean, we lived in it was probably 70 or 80-year-old dorm at the time, and heat worked sometimes. And we didn't have air conditioning in it.
Oh my goodness!
But we had fans.
Oh,
but we were in the middle of campus, and we stayed wired. I stayed in a dorm the entire 4 years, because it was too fun than moving off campus and being out of the loop. But we talked for a couple of days. I mean, we do talk a lot, or my former roommates, but being on campus is kind of a moment where we go, we were pretty green. we didn't know anything. And it was just, one guy had come down from New Jersey. I was from the mountains, and the other guy was from Chapel Hill. And he struggled the most. It was wide open for him. And Mike and I are afraid we're going to run out of money, or we're doing whatever we got to do to save money, because that's what our parents taught us. So as time went on, we figured out there were other options and things we could be comfortable with. So it's awesome time. Totally awesome.
I think the most shocking experience I had was when I first met Sam in our biology class, and during the lecture, he kept like poking me and trying to like offer me things. And I told him, no, stop. And he was like, hey, I got this heroin for you.
No.
And it's the good stuff. And I'm like, Sam, I'm trying to listen to biology. I gotta focus.
I sat next to you in biology lab.
Biology lab. That's the problem you have with the story, is that I didn't say where you sat.
I sat next to you in biology lab, which just was like the most like nothing. It was just kind of just like a goofy waste of time. That's kind of what it felt like.
We did some other than the heroin, we did some pretty cool experiments,
Yeah, there was a lot of that at Chapel Hill, I can promise you.
Oh, really?
It was more on the marijuana side, and I can.
Oh yeah, definitely here. I think our roommates, they must smoke like 10-foot bong or something, because I'll be walking up to my room and all of a sudden the whole hallway just like someone's skunking it up.
Wafted.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those that can honestly say I've never partaken, but one of the near worst decisions I could have been penalized with. A friend of mine called me one night in the dorm and said, "There's going to be a general police bust on campus tomorrow because they suspect there's a load of marijuana has come in." And I said, "You know me. Why would you even be telling me this?" I'm not going to be interested. Well, it turned out his roommate had a bag of marijuana, and he was afraid the room was going to get searched, and his brother lived in another dorm, and they said, well, if they suspect anybody, they're going to go look at any relatives on campus. And I said, well, what is it you're asking me to do? And he says, well, I wonder if I could put the bag. Well, a baggie sold for like $15 back then. And I said, well, look, I'm going to the library. It was Saturday night, and I'm going to the library. Just a hint there. And so when I get back, I said, he must have stuck it in the closet. And these are old closets, 12-foot ceilings and stuff. And I looked through every little nook and cranny. I didn't see anything. So he called the next morning and said, Jamie wants to come down and get his bag. And I said, is it still here? I said, I looked all over, and I didn't. And you hear the running coming down the hall because they're screaming like, where is it? And they come in my room and they throw open. And I thought I was looking for a baggie. There was a hefty trash can bag. Like a 40-gallon bag stuffed. It weighed like 9-10 pounds. And it
thousands of dollars of marijuana.
Even then. And I thought it was laundry. I pulled it out of the way and pushed it back in. And I was never so glad to see something leave my room. That would have been distribution.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
that would have been prison.
Oh, but it was. I learned a big lesson on that one.
Oh yeah.
It's not mine. It's not mine.
I know someone I talked to. He was in my math class freshman year. I remember me and him were talking at the dining hall, and he was telling me about how like him and his brother got busted had like mushrooms and like weed in the room, and the police came knocking on their door, and he spent like 2 nights in county jail or something. Oh. And I'm like, I could never.
Yeah. Well, back then, having long hair was just about as bad as possessing drugs. So it was a tough time. I went to a high school that was just like every other high school, we had a hair code. You
Oh,
know,
man.
my hair would barely pass right now. It couldn't touch your ears anywhere. Couldn't be more than an inch towards the forehead. That cut out the Beatle haircuts. And in the back, it couldn't be below the natural hairline.
No.
Well, which was coincidentally,
Mullets?
it was the
No mullets.
no mullets. But that was coincidental. That was the state wrestling hair code, you know, for people that wrestled. And so they just adopted it, as did a lot of schools. And by the time I graduated, they had relaxed it, and we found out who could grow sideburns in like a day. We had a few of those, and
You had a long hair stage.
not until college, and it never got. I mean, it barely touched my shoulders, and it was long. The sideburns were down here, but
There's an old picture of him. He looks like Sirius Black from Harry Potter.
I'd had her haircut a little earlier than that, because that was the weekend we went to meet Donna's mother and dad.
Cool.
That was what they saw when she brought me home for the first time,
Oh.
and they still granted permission.
Sweet. I was gonna say, how did that go? Or
It was about a year later we got married. So, but that was the norm. And her brother had much longer hair than I did, Dennis. So, the way had been paved.
I see. Yeah, they had experience. Yeah.
But for my age and younger, we're the first boomers that didn't go to war. I mean, not you can go voluntarily, but we weren't drafted. And so, even within our own age group, there's the you didn't serve, did you? You know, and there's a little bit of that, but that has passed. It really it's really in the rearview mirror right now. And my best friend Mark served in the military for a number of years. He was, if you ever watched the movie or the show MASH, Hawkeye Pierce is he's a doctor, but he just kind of he salutes underhanded and everything. He thinks that the war is the biggest farce, but that was Mark. But
yeah?
he served brilliantly as in a medical profession.
Wow.
And had a lot to do with some of the planning in the Middle East. He just didn't ever think it would be someplace he had to go and deploy 4 or 5 times. So, he upped and I didn't. That didn't change our friendship at all, not a bit.
My grandfather, he was in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force.
Ooh.
So he would be in the bomber planes that would fly over
Right.
and drop the bombs.
Yeah. Yeah, probably the most lasting thing in that war was the Agent Orange. It's like a Roundup, but it's a defoliant. They used the large planes and they sprayed, tens of millions of gallons over the period of years to defoliate the forest so the Viet Cong couldn't hide. But it ended up with a lot of after effects, side effects and birth defects, things like that. But it was just it was an idea gone wrong. And a lot of the pilots, talk about how bad they feel about that. And, of course, they were told it was perfectly safe, as you always are.
Yeah.
But my small town had 4 fatalities in Vietnam. They were all older than me, but with close to 60,000 dying in that, from the U. It's hard to not be close to 1 or 2 of those. It's a reminder. But the ones that serve, I mean, they're the ultimate first responders. I mean, that's a gift if you can do it. But there's got to be a third position, right?
Yep.
You've got to figure out how to avoid this stuff.
Yeah, it's not. I don't like the idea of people were joking about. I hate to say it, but people were joking about a draft coming up, and that makes me sick. It actually makes me sick. I don't.
I think we have enough people in our military that we wouldn't even need a draft.
Yeah, but I just
To be
don't
fair, we would just use drones and
Well, it's
all that.
becoming less and less boots on the ground.
Yeah.
But
I just don't want any of it.
But
Any
where
conflict.
Vietnam lost because we weren't any good on the ground.
Yeah.
Is what the message was. We had all the technology and the planes and helicopters, but can't find them all. That kind of thing. So
I would just say my sweeping opinion about this, all that kind of stuff is, how about let's just not do that? Let's not do it.
I
Okay,
don't
no
think
fighting.
I don't think that peace everywhere coexists. I don't think that will ever be the case.
It'd be a good try, but it's
Yeah.
the other guy always says you first.
Yeah. Well, I would just say like, I guess I could amend it to say just let's try not. Let's try to like calm down a little bit. But I know that's like a big like, sweeping thing. But like, yeah, it's just I like to hope that we get to a time where that's just not like because there's been years of like military stuff happening or conflicts happening just to secure interests and at the cost of people's lives for no reason, and it's paraded as something that's patriotic, but it's really not. And then people who are kind of given that idea that it's patriotic feel disrespected when like people say that it's not, and it's like, well, we're not trying to disrespect you, we're just trying to explain like
I think the
bigger
people
picture.
fighting, because they're doing it for a bunch of people in suits at the top,
Yeah.
basically, and they're, I guess, kind of, you say not really brainwashed, but influenced by, I guess, the higher power. And I think a lot of people, I don't think anyone really wants to fight.
Yeah.
I don't think I think they do it because I guess they feel like they're obliged for their country.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know, I feel like I'm twisting my words a bit, but I feel like obviously no one wants to go to war, but I feel like people feel like they have to.
Yeah. Some people like talk a tough game because they want to say like, I could fight, let's do it. Like there's like that have you ever seen the show Barry?
I've seen a couple episodes.
It's a Bill Hader is in it. It's a comedy and drama, so it's like serious, but it's also funny. He's like a former SNL actor, but he was a Marine, and he is like this hitman character who wants to become an actor, and he like at one point he reunites with some of his like Marine buddies, and they're like they're like party animals. They want to like do all this fun stuff. But then when this one guy figures out that like he's a hitman, he's like, oh, I want in. I want to do all this stuff with you. And he's like, no, let's not do that. And then he's like, no. He like tells other people about his like one mission he has to do, like was one hitman job. And then like they're roped into it now. And they're all like, yeah, let's go get guns ablazing. And they go after like the cartel and they want to shoot up all this stuff. And, they like don't even care about like all the violence and everything. And that's like a very like harsh stereotype of like ex-military people. Like, it's a harsh like stereotype of it. But the whole point is like that's what some people talk as if they are. It's like, oh yeah, I'd want to go in guns blazing and do all this stuff, and I'd love to shoot this person or do this, and it's very like kind of evil sounding. And so, but like people talk that game. I agree with you in that no one actually is that. I mean,
I feel like a lot of people that come back from war, like there's a lot like. I feel like the country treats a lot of our veterans not that well, especially because they come back, they have PTSD, they've been through hell, and it's hard for them to work, and that's why you see a lot of veterans on the street.
And a lot of it is like, they come from a generation that mental health wasn't considered important. And even though today there have been leaps and bounds, there's still that kind of like resonant culture of like,
just tough it out.
Tough it out. Don't talk about your feelings when that's what's eating away at you, and that's immensely important.
Yeah, you have a distant uncle named TJ that was a soldier in World War II, and he was visiting us in Alpharetta one time, and I said after dinner, and he was probably 25 years older than me. I said, let's go for a walk. And he looked at me and says, I don't take walks. And I thought that was like kind of a joke, like, I've eaten and stuff. But turned out he was a prisoner of war in World War II. And when he was captured by the Germans, they had no place to put the prisoners. So they marched them for 19 months. They got up every morning after, laying under a tree and walked until it was dark and laid down. And they got up the next day and they did that for a year and a half. And he says, I'll never walk for fun again.
Oh, my goodness.
But, he is convinced that the United States was in the right spot then. And, there's a lot of that today. The sense of duty, as you mentioned, Sam, people feel like that's what they need to do, but it is really hard to win over 100% of the people that the only way to do this is to go to war. In the 70s, when I was in high school, the phrase they always used was the domino effect, that if Vietnam falls to communism, then Cambodia and Laos, and then you never know where that's going to stop. And we've got to stop that. And theoretically, that's true. It'd be great if we could stop that, but that'd be like saying, well, they're trying to stop us from influencing any other part of the world too. So it's propaganda again, trying to make sure that we're better than them,
Yeah.
and that our ideals are higher than theirs. But I think the U.S. is looked upon as a protector in general, but it's hard to draw that line. That's what we're talking about. You go a little further than that, and it's hard to stop sometimes. And nobody likes to retreat,
Yeah.
right? So, but that's a reasonable thing to be concerned about. I think that's our biggest concern today. Can't just keep trotting people out there, and there's a lot at risk. I mean, economies, people. I mean, the stakes are high.
And I feel like now, because we're more interconnected, like everyone can communicate. Like back then, like you think of the enemy as just like this faceless person. And now you can actually you can see more of the effect that war is happening on them and all the destruction that happens. And I feel like now it's a lot becoming more humanized. And especially now you can hear representatives from both sides talking about, like, especially when you hear stuff about like Israel and Palestine and all the war that's happening over there.
And it's what's interesting is like that whole like concept of like there being more footage and more like information accessible. That's what, kind of what Vietnam was like, that's why there was such a huge peace effort, is that was the war that a lot more footage was being accessible to people like doctored or filtered and everything. And it's like, and now that's even more so. Like it's like you said, like it's so accessible, like on your smartphone, on anything. And you're seeing people's lives being affected, and it makes it no longer like a distant threat, and it makes it apparent how much misinformation is coming out, and it kind of like, I hate to say it, but almost like in a cartoonish way, like what certain leaders are saying and what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
And it's like people can kind of make up their own mind now. I mean, you always could, but like now especially. And I think I think the age range for people who are like legitimately thinking about these issues has gotten even younger. And like that's good and bad, because like with that, like people can be so easily twisted. It's like that whole meme of like, oh, I'm 13, I just got a computer, and like there's the grid of all the political ideas, and it's like a meme where like it shows like the person's head like bouncing up and down. Like they find this new website, they find this new YouTuber, oh, they find this guy, oh, now I'm I'm hardcore this guy. And
so a lot of, I feel like, especially those people, really easy to convince. And I feel like that's like, especially you can hear more voices when you're younger, and you're basically going to choose the political side on who can convince you the most. And that's kind of how I was when I was in 13, 14. I was more on like right-wing YouTube, and I got really enthralled with right-wing politics just because the people, I guess, were more explanatory, I feel like more intense with how they explained everything and how they debated.
They were more expressive.
Yeah.
And they would have like absolutes. Like,
yeah. And a lot of it was, I guess, more with the propaganda of the people they were debating against, like, I guess it was more the footage of trying to make them look stupid. And especially with like people like Ben Shapiro, he goes out and he debates college students. And they're college students. They don't have the best political like knowledge background. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, oh, everyone that thinks on the left are dumb because they can't debate Ben Shapiro, who does politics for a living.
It does it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just owned this college student.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about our upcoming election, if you had a candidate that was under 50 years old, that would mean they were born after Vietnam ended. So, there's a lack of a perspective there, which could be very good, but sometimes the parties want somebody a little more senior so they do remember everything and can appeal to all of the ages. I'd love to see a younger candidate in there. I mean, I was too young to vote for Kennedy. I was like 8, but at the same time, I look back and he was kind of he was a hero. Whether he was or not, I couldn't tell you. But the way he was presented, and to me, that was a kind of a with it guy compared to the previous few that have been ex-generals or lifelong politics. And Reagan was kind of a curveball, certainly an expressive speaker, appealed to a lot of people, comes out of Hollywood, which is more towards the left, but practical man in terms of counting the jelly beans he used to talk about all the time about how to balance the economy.
And I feel like that's the biggest thing with like Donald Trump, and that's why he had so much influence, I feel like, over the right. He wasn't really a big politician. He was basically like a B-list celebrity, but now he's coming up, he's talking loud, he's promising all these things. He's basically sweet, like he could sweet talk. He's a businessman, and he basically and I feel like he basically was able to win because he was able to
Control like
He looked like a nonconformist.
he was going against everything, and especially with, I feel like a lot of people didn't vote in that election. That was like a big thing and because everyone was like, oh, Hillary's just going to win. It's obvious Hillary's going to win. No way Donald Trump can win, and then Donald Trump wins. He takes it all, and that was a big thing. And I feel like that's why a lot of people now are pushing to vote. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of the younger kids don't have that like informed political opinion. They I wouldn't say self-centered. I mean, to be fair, I'm not registered to vote. I hold opinions but don't vote. But also, like this election, I don't think there's any candidates I like. That's the thing.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think most people, like, no one really wants Ron DeSantis to win. No one wants Joe Biden to win. Trump, I don't think can win. I do wish there was a younger, I guess someone to connect to, and I feel like that's kind of a thing with like the political party itself, with like I guess having two parties, where you're choosing sides when it's more dynamic than that. It's not left or right. You can be
Independent.
3/4 there, 2/4 there. I feel like we need more of a spectrum of political parties.
For sure. I don't like the idea of having to choose a lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
Like obviously I'm aligned a certain way mostly, but like everyone seems, I'm not the first person to say this, but like everyone seems kind of to have like a mask of what they're masquerading as what they'll do, and then they get in and then they don't do much of it, but then you're like, well, at least at least this person, or at least this person's doing this, or and it's just it seems like you kind of feel a little powerless when you think you've made a decision and nothing's really happening.
Yeah.
They're not the person you think they were. And now I say this like I haven't voted in many elections. So far I've only voted in like some local stuff. So like, I haven't really had it. I've had like observable experience, and I've obviously lived in the US, but like,
Yeah, you even in the local, it's the earlier you can start reading what they are trying to accomplish. For a small town, it's commissioners and what their view of how your town's going to grow, or ultimately look 15 to 50 years down the road. I mean, and you have to look at it that way, so you can bring in jobs or close down certain factories. Just reimagine yourself. But very few people spend the time on the locals because they're looking at all the hype for the
Yeah.
national stuff, or the senators or the House of Representatives. You know, back in the 90s, Newt Gingrich, who is pretty well known, used to be Speaker of the House, he was the representative in our district there in Alpharetta. And I was with the chemical company still then, and was on a statewide committee that we met with other chemical people to talk about growth of the industry, trends, safety, things like that. And we would meet with the state officials. Well, Newt Gingrich was in town, and he was a lobbyist. We call him lobbyist. Anybody that helps you communicate with the government. Got us a breakfast with Newt Gingrich, and this is like 1994, I guess. And he brought with him Sam Nunn, who is another famous senator from the state of Georgia, since retired. And the two of them sat down with 6 of us at breakfast, and I've never heard so many good questions. They weren't telling us things; they were asking us a million questions about, you know, which direction's this going? What do you see from imports? What do you see exports? What do you see with the dollar? And we got through that, and they says, well, let's talk about the products. You know, what's next? What do you need to get to the next level, or the safer chemical? I mean, it was amazing. And those are guys that were kind of pushed aside. You go look them up. They were kind of pushed out because they're in the middle. They weren't extreme enough, you know. But Gingrich is a guy that I'd vote for president tomorrow if he ran, because he gets it. And until you get a one-on-one like that, and so you go to the forums, and when they come to do their town hall meetings, you go and you ask a question. It takes a little time, but you got to do it. But I think you'd enjoy figuring out what they really represent.
I think the only thing is, you know, like we were saying earlier, around here there's not really a lot of political people.
I mean, there is like the Republican club
The
group.
Republican club, yeah.
It wasn't well. There's a Republican club, and then there's like a Republican like group that holds meetings. I think they hold like a barbecue or something like that.
But like that's it. Like there's no other.
I mean, there is like the
ideas.
local election, kind of for the sheriff and for mayor.
Maybe, yeah.
I think I saw signs for. I think it was Dunlap's. The last name Dunlap was running. I don't know if they are like Fortune 500 and own all of Dahlonega or something, but
they're probably in cahoots with the person who owns all the apartments.
Ooh, there you go.
There's one person who owns like everything here. She's known as Miss Monopoly.
really.
Yeah.
No, that's the name I gave her because I don't want to actually say her real name.
Oh, I don't know who you're talking about.
You don't know who I'm talking about.
So she must own two
Oh,
hotels on
I think
Boardwalk.
I might know. Maybe.
She's like, if I'm getting my my second.
Is she the one that everyone talks shit about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
then
Miss Monopoly.
Oh, yeah. Then I know who that is.
Like she owns like so many apartments and like she makes so much money and she like I guess you can't really, from what I've heard, I haven't lived in a building that she's owned, but like you can't really get a hold of her for like certain problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
So you got to figure out how much of that is propaganda and how much of it's truth.
that's
right?
true.
So-
That's true.
To
It
be
is
fair,
kind of
I've had good and bad experiences. Like we called a repair guy a couple days ago in the morning, and he was here by like 1 o'clock. They come fast, but I put a thing in for my fan, and then I never got a response. So it's 50-50.
And every single day, I don't know if this aligns with like what buildings Miss Monopoly owns, but like as far as internet goes, like every single day on Yik Yak, which is like a 5-mile radius anonymous app for colleges. At least it used to be. I think it's.
Oh, the internet's
National.
terrible.
Yeah, internet is terrible at every single one of these places.
And it's at weird
every day.
times. Like sometimes it's like it's good, and then it's like at night it just like poops the bed.
That sounds like they're running the servers for something else at night,
Probably.
and draining all the.
They're mining Bitcoin.
Well, there you go.
But they've done a lot of construction over here. I guess it's more like quality of life stuff. Like they had hammocks and a fire pit up there. They're building a new gym area. I just kind of wish did parking different because I drop you off at like 11:30 at night after we hang out, and I can't get a parking spot. I'll have to park in like some random like, basically create my own. But I think it's funny. Like there's like a part where I would park if there is no spots like super close, and especially when I drop you off, it was raining. I'm like, I'm not gonna park all the way up there and then walk in the rain. And the next day I got a text that's like, please park in a designated spot, don't make your own or we'll start towing. And I'm like, dang.
They figure that out. Well, kudos to the people that can build a portfolio of housing or something. They've worked at it. Sometimes you see them adding, well, you meant fire pits or something, but they also know the market's going to turn.
Yeah.
And it always does. You just don't know when. So you've got to have the amenities to be the marketable apartment when the market changes.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's a little kind of would be a little bit different, especially because this is a small campus and this is really there's really two apartment complex and maybe they're all owned by the same person. Mm-hmm. But you either move in there or you move in where we are. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like with such a small market, I feel like this person can make the apartments as crappy as they want.
They're guaranteed customers constantly.
I actually went online a few weeks ago and looked at the housing on campus here just so I'd kind of understand. And I noticed that there was a limited choice of off campus. And of course, they want you to be on campus till you're at least a junior. And
well, now they've gotten rid of that. I'm pretty sure you don't have. It was originally you had to be a sophomore, and then maybe it was junior, but now I think you can opt out of that.
There were some loopholes,
yeah,
on it, but they kind of wanted you to get that minimum number of hours in so that you had a good foundation.
Yeah,
and also had to pay a lot more for living on campus.
I'm looking into getting an apartment, hopefully.
Yeah,
and it's with my brother, and
right.
And I'm in contact with somebody right now, but like I'm just hoping that goes through because where it is, I won't say it. I don't want to dox or anything, but like it's in a really good spot. It's like really close to the classroom buildings. Like it's all close to everything.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and if it works out, it would be like perfect.
But it's just over the 7-Eleven, right? No.
Yeah, there's a Waffle House on top of it.
My sister, her apartment in Atlanta was right next to a gas station. That was also right next to a club, and there'd always be like shootings and
goodness.
Crazy stuff that would happen. Like I remember, she was close to the torch. The Olympic torch in Atlanta.
Yes.
And she saw someone climb it. And there's a bunch of police around. Like I remember we're on FaceTime and she was like, there was like an explosion kind of, and she was like, oh my God. And then there was just a car that was completely ablaze on the highway.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff happens in the city.
I haven't missed living down there.
That's my biggest thing. I hate driving to Atlanta. I'm happy my office or for my internship is super close to like my house. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to, it's not actually in Atlanta itself. And because I don't want to deal with that traffic. It's the worst.
I've driven in most of the big cities in this country, L.A., Houston, Chicago, New York. Atlanta's fine relative to them.
Oh, yeah.
But compared to the rest of what we're experiencing, I avoid the ATL best I can.
Well, I feel like a lot of it is just getting to Atlanta because the drivers are just the worst. I've never seen that bad at driving anywhere except driving to Atlanta.
You want to know something funny? Like I've definitely experienced like Atlanta traffic firsthand. I was on my way to a convention with a friend and their family, and obviously their family were driving us, and because I didn't want to drive by myself to Atlanta, and they knew their way around, and I realized, like because I'd always obviously been driven around by my parents when I was little, and they have to drive a certain way, pretty calm and everything. I realized I was in the car of somebody who my dad would complain about, like because like he was like zipping like and like we're in this huge vehicle.
Oh, just drive like in and out.
Yeah. And he's like, this is how you drive in Atlanta, and I'm like,
I hate those people.
What?
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're at the speed limit in the right lane, and they're making you feel bad about it.
Yeah. You're like, how dare you? And then like he's like zoom like NASCAR and around like switching lanes protagonist style, and I'm like, I'm in this car. Oh my! Like I kind of hid my reaction to my friend, but I was like, I'm not. It's kind of scary.
Well, I had a sales rep in Atlanta that got a ticket coming to work one day, and she says, they got to give you 10 miles over the speed limit. I said, why would they have to give you that? Well, they just kind of got to give you that. And I said, what'd you get? Well, I was doing 77 in a 70 zone. I said, we don't have any 70 zones. We have 65. She goes, oh.
I was told like you go 75. I mean, usually I go 80 on the far left lane, and that's the max I go. I see people flying right past me. I'm like, I think I lucked out once. So I'm driving back home, and I think it was a 55, like about to turn 65, and I think I was going like 75, 80 on the left, and I drive up, and there's a cop right there, and all of a sudden the lights they turn on, he pulls out right behind me, but all of a sudden the truck there was a truck that was going way faster than me that was next to me, and I pull over. I'm like, okay, well, I'm getting pulled over, and all of a sudden he goes in the next lane. He goes right after that truck.
Yep.
And I think if he wasn't there,
you'd have been it.
Oh,
Now here's something that even your parents didn't deal with. I'm just out of college, and I get my first company car. I'm making sales calls, so I'm driving 30 to 50,000 miles a year. They lowered the national speed limit to a maximum of 55. There were a couple of far west states that they left it at 70, but anywhere this side of the Mississippi, 55 was the speed limit. And they were pretty tough on it early. But later on, the people that used to drive 80 are driving, and that looks like a blur when you're driving 55. The whole idea was to save gasoline. We were still in the oil embargo. And yeah, your car consumes less gas per mile, but it takes a long time. I got less sales calls in a day because I couldn't drive as fast. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but you get one less sales call in, that's real money.
yep.
And the truckers will tell you that's one less delivery. So anyway.
Well, yeah. I was just checking how long we had been recording for, and I think we have a good bit. It's about like an hour and 19 minutes.
Wow.
That doesn't feel like it.
I must be due for a nap.
We record that for the OnlyFans.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, the napping stream.
Napping stream, and we charge. There's a paywall for
Oh,
that.
yeah.
We don't give you guys naps for free.
Hey, I'll have you guys know I was up past 1 o'clock on New Year's Eve, so don't put me in the too slow a crowd. So,
Well, thank you guys for listening. This has been H. He's dropping his diss track next week. See you guys next time.
Thanks for watching.
adios.